you so much for joining us this snowy evening. I know we've all had such fun working with Snowmageddon. We most of us have stayed home, but some of us have been out and about in the weather and the snow and the roads, and we coped anyway. So blessings on all of you who did all that. We the people is our opening words of the preamble of the United States Constitution. And what those words say is that we, the people, are in charge of the government. Sometimes it doesn't seem that way, but we have to learn to push back. And that's what this podcast is all about, trying to help us understand how we push back. I want to thank you for joining us. And I want you to know that this podcast is all about learning about what is going on in the State House and in Washington, D.C. And we have a perfect guest to tell us that. I want to introduce Senator Candace Smith. She represents North Carolina District 5, which is Edgecombe and Pitt County. What I also want to add is some of you may not be familiar with what a legislative update is, but that's what she's going to share with us. What is happening in the State House? That's the legislative update that she's going to provide. It provides information on what's going on, who's going on, and what we need to know in order to help ourselves and help our community. So I want to just introduce very briefly Senator Smith. I want to say that she's serving 2 terms. She served 2 terms as a mayor in Greenville. And she was elected to the city council in 2009 and later made history as the city's first Black mayor. She has had such a stellar career. And in the legislature, she serves on committees, she'll tell you that. Um, she's had bills that were passed, she'll tell you that. And I don't want to delay any more of my reading of her bio. She can tell you her very own self. So, Senator Smith, the floor is yours. Tell us about you.
Hello. First, I would like to say thank you so much for having me on We the People. I appreciate that. Just to let you know a little bit about myself, my name is Kandie Smith, and I started on the City Council in Greenville and moved to the mayor position. And then from there, I ran for the State House as a representative. I served 2 terms there, and then I am completing my second term in the Senate. Now, I was born in Spartanburg, South Carolina, oldest of 4. I went to Charleston Southern University, graduated with a degree in sociology and a minor in communications. And I am a AME Zion. We call it a Zionite. And a lot of my training, that I like to say, has come through the church. So I never thought about running, never wanted to run, but I was asked by the people when I moved to here to Greenville, North Carolina, and I said, "Well, tell me, what do they do?" And they said, "You advocate for people. We think you will be a good fit." And I was barely in town 5 years, maybe 4 years before I went and registered, and here I am, still working, still advocating, and still fighting for the people.
I'm glad you mentioned that because that was one of the first questions that I was going to ask you. How in the world did you get involved in politics? Because most people run that away when they are talking about running for politics or for an office. And that's a difficult decision to make, I would think. But those who make it like yourself are committed to helping our community. So I know you ventured it a little bit, but could you give me a little bit more information about how you made the decision to run, how you have connected with the community that you serve? how they give you feedback on what you're doing.
Okay. Well, I decided to run when I was first asked, and I started asking questions. What exactly do they do? And then they explained to me, and I asked them to allow me to think about it. And that was 2 years prior to me actually running. I said, let me think about it. 2 years passed, and it was rather quickly, and it never crossed my mind again. And then someone came to me and said, I thought you said you were going to run. I said I was going to think about it. And so I didn't want to be seen as someone who was not honest. And so because I didn't want to be seen as someone who's not honest, I went down to the Board of Elections and I registered. Now I should have known something was wrong because they was like, "Oh my gosh!" And I was like, "What? What?" They was excited that I was running, and I was like, "Oh goodness!" I didn't know what was happening, and so I registered, and it was the last like 10 minutes right before filing closed. So I registered, and that had me in a race, and the incumbent who had been in the position was there for 22 years. And so I was like, whew, okay. I guess I'm in it now. Too late to back out. I've already signed up. So I ran and I won that election by 12 votes. So
Wow.
I was out there working. It wasn't like an easy task. I was working. And I said, well, I guess two things could come of this, and it could be two good things. Either I will win, or my opponent will make sure that she knows she has to work, because there could be someone else to be in that seat. So I didn't take it as a negative. I said both of them would be a win-win. Um, and I won by 12 votes. And so how do I interact with the community? I make a lot of events. As a city council, they already knew me. I was already out in the community. I was already attending a lot of things. And so because of that, they knew me. So I continued to attend a lot of events. And then I had town halls. And then I would do things virtually, because once you get into the House and the Senate for the state, you have a larger um, audience. You have a larger constituency that you have to serve. So right now it's like 189,000 people. So I'd sometimes have town halls by Zoom. And I put them out there on Facebook, make advertisements, let them know, I want to talk to you. I'm going to give you an update, and then I would like for you to ask questions. And I do things that way. And then I'm invited to legislative lunches, breakfasts, dinners, so that I can sit at the table. I do that. I meet people where they are. I attend churches all throughout my term. I don't wait until just election time. I just go the entire time because they're my constituents, right? And if I don't go to where they are, they may not see me or may not know me. I
Right.
attend sporting events, so I just do a little bit of everything that I can, and I'm invited to a lot. I can't make everything, but I try not to miss everything.
Well, I appreciate you accepting our invitation to give an update about what's going on in the legislature. That because this is such a seminal year for us in terms of voting, I'm sure that there are lots of things going on in the legislature that we need to know about, and that you can share, and also how we can support what you're doing, and also how we as a community can understand what's going on in the community. Because sometimes when we hear pieces of legislation, it doesn't make any sense to us, or it doesn't. It doesn't, as my son says, it doesn't compute. And so we really need to have a strong understanding of what's going on in our legislature, how we can cope, how we can spread the word, and how we are affected ourselves. So if you could just talk about what's going on in the state legislature.
Well, unfortunately, I would start by saying not much. And the reason why I would say that is because we are the only state in the country who does not have a budget. And so we're operating in some very challenging times. I would
Excuse
say,
me 1 minute. Did you say we don't have a budget?
yes, ma'am, we do not have a
How
budget.
did that happen?
Um, right now, there's a stalemate the leader in the House and the leader in the Senate, they're, I guess, trying to come up with a compromise, and that's not worked. Both of them are from the same party, Republican Party, but they can't seem to connect. And because they don't have agreement on the budget, we don't have a budget. And this, I think now it's 230 days that we are without a budget. And so we're in some challenging times, I will say that. And as of, if we look at operating without a budget, what you'll find is this delay has real consequences on communities. I can tell you definitely in Eastern North Carolina. Because we don't have a finalized budget, we're at the point that local governments, school districts, healthcare providers, nonprofits, they're forced to operate with uncertainty. That's where they are right now. They can't really operate the way they would if we had a budget, because temporary spending measures have to be in place. And that's because they got to do things like keep the lights on. They have to make those hard decisions. What do we fund? What do we not fund? Just because they don't know when we're going to fund the budget. Mm-hmm. And some of these services and things that they are offering depend on our money from the state that we give them. So it makes it an uncertain time, especially for those rural communities that I serve here in Eastern North Carolina, because we rely, many of them rely heavily on that consistent state funding that is not happening right now. And at the same time, what we're doing is we're preparing to go into what we call a short session, right? That's supposed to begin in April. So we've not really been in session. We've had times that we gavel in, but we don't really go. And we're not expected until like the middle of April to actually go into short session. And when we go into short session, what we really are supposed to be doing is adjusting the budget. Well, guess what? We don't have a budget to adjust. So short session does move rather swiftly, but we are supposed to be adjusting the budget and some limited policy issues. But that's what we should be doing, which means, you know, a lot of people are waiting on things to happen, but these decisions will be made very quickly because we personally don't have a budget yet. So we're going to be, I guess, making a budget, and I don't know how we can adjust what we have not made. So that's why I say it's kind of crazy. Another factor is that's kind of shaping what we're doing is that redistricting. And I'm sure everybody's heard about redistricting and what has happened. And what that does is it takes people and it moves them, because it happened in my district in Eastern North Carolina, and it's moved the lines. And you have some people asking like, so am I in Congressional District 1, Congressional District 3? What do I do? Who do I vote for now? A lot of people don't know, and it happened so quickly. And now we're upon us looking at the primaries coming up on March the 3rd. So it's one of those unfortunate things, but it is really meant to take the voices away from people. And we've been fighting it and asking questions and why are we doing it? But there was a call that was made from the White House, and that call,
really?
Oh yeah, that call was made from the president to change the districts. He asked for more seats. He said, I need more seats. That's the only way that he can keep power, is to have more seats. And so we look at, when we started, it was like 7-7, right? And then now it was changed. So now we're like at 10-3, 11-3, since they just made.
My goodness.
So 11 Republicans and 3 Democrats.
Yeah.
So it's very unfortunate, but it was very intentional, just so people will know. And I will say this. One of the things I often say is power corrupts, but absolute power corrupts absolutely. That's and right. So what we find ourselves in as Democrats is in the super minority. So when you're in the super minority, that means you can't even uphold the veto of the governor. If you're just in a minority, then you can uphold the governor's veto. So in the Senate, we're in the super minority. So it doesn't matter how we vote, and we can all vote collectively together in the Senate. But because of us being in the super minority, then we can't uphold the governor's veto. It has to go over to the House in order for that to take place. So we're in some very troubling times right now. People have been reaching out. I've been going to visit companies and talking about if we do not have a budget, what's not funded, how they can't take care of people. So it's a very tough conversation. I can tell you that I have been having with much of the community. Now, I'll say this, as a Democratic senator, it is important to make sure that we are very clear. Although we're in the minority, does not mean that we do not still fight. Does not mean that we don't go, and when we do have session, offer amendments, try to make bills better. Oftentimes they're tabled, but what we're doing is making sure the community knows what's happening and what's taking place. Sometimes people, they just don't know because it's so much that happens, and we don't even have cameras in our Senate. So if the news media is not there, you might not get it. So there's a lot that takes place that people don't know. So what we try to do is make sure that we speak up and speak out, because that way people can understand what we're doing, how we're trying to fight. And if we were in the majority, some of those things that we would do in order to make sure that we're standing up and we're fighting for the public. We're constantly making sure that we're having meeting with just ourselves as a caucus to look at how we could move forward, having meetings with the governor, trying to figure out what we can do, and with other cabinet members, so we can find out how can we still serve the people, because that's why we were elected. So we're in some challenging times right now, but we're not going to give up the fight. We're not going to back down, because I think people are tired of being sick and tired. And I will say this, I often say, if you're not at the table, then you're often on the menu. And so I encourage people not to be on the menu. So if you go into a meeting and it looks like there's no room for you, bring a folding chair.
Really sound advice. Really sound. You know, I'm listening to the impact of a lack of budget is having throughout the state, and particularly in Eastern North Carolina. And one of the things that really surfaces for me is education.
Mm-hmm.
The lack of a budget is impacting our schools, whether it's our secondary schools, whether it's our elementary schools, it's impacting our schools, and that's our children. That's our future. And so, is there any way that we can be helpful and try, we meaning the community, in terms of at least trying to unstop the log jam so that some of the items get passed and that some issues are addressed? Healthcare is another one. But, I don't want to, it may sound hopeless, but it isn't.
Right.
We just have to figure it out.
You're 100% correct. We do have to figure it out. And what we can't do is we don't have room to give up. We don't have room to stop the fight. I do hear from a lot of people that it affects their day-to-day lives. And like you said, when we think about the schools, the teachers, the funding for the schools, because they're trying to affect education dearly. And we do hear a lot about the healthcare system, because, we just expanded Medicaid and we're trying to just take care of people. But the fight is against that. And there's rising cost. And I think it will happen probably the middle of February, where people are having to pay their premiums and they're doubling
Yeah.
when they're, going to receive health care. That should not happen. But where we are right now and how the fight has been, it's been more about power and not about the people. And so I a lot of times look at the infrastructure that people are concerned about, like our roads, transportation, our safe bridges. We're trying to make sure that people are taken care of. And when I often say, when you work, your taxes that you pay come to us as a state. And what you do is you expect us to allocate those to those things that are important to you. And so when we do not have a budget, then we're not doing what? Allocating those funds. That's your money. That's not our money. That's your money. And so that's why it is important for us to make sure that we are working for the people. I don't think that people are asking for special treatment for us to pass a budget. It's expected. We're the only state in the country who has yet to pass a budget. So people are asking for a fair investment, and they really want real attention to the issues. And that's what we have to fight for. That's what we have to do. And so we're not giving up. As a matter of fact, my minority leader has a clock, like a digital clock outside of her door. And the majority leader can look down and the clock is right there as soon as he looks out of his door. And I think it's clicking and it says it's 230 days, 17 hours, 15 seconds.
Wow.
And it continues so that he can see how long that we're going right now without taking care of the people. I think everybody, the public really needs to know.
I agree with you. What really concerns me is that is the number that you just mentioned, 11-3. If we were not gerrymandering the place, North Carolina would almost have an even distribution of Republicans and Democrats. And so, because of the gerrymandering, we are now suffering because the economic situation is not something we can deal with, because the folks who would ordinarily be there because they would be elected by everybody are not there. So could you talk a little bit more about what happens when gerrymandering takes place?
So there's a thing you may have heard people say, something like cracking and packing. So when gerrymandering takes place, what they do is it's like the elected leaders choose who they want to represent instead of the community choosing who they want to represent them. So that should not happen. As elected officials, we should not say, well, I want to represent these people and I don't want to represent those people. If we run and we tell you that we're running to represent the community, then we should do that. So when we say cracking, what it does, it draws lines where communities of interest who are normally together and have the same interest, they're divided. And so some may be in one section, some may be in another, which means it dilutes the ability to truly have representation. And then other times it may be packing. And what we say with that is taking communities and packing as many people together in that one community. So you'll have a voice, but it'll only be one. And so it wouldn't.
As opposed to what could happen if everybody were represented.
Yes, as opposed to what could happen. So what it means is, let's say we were looking at some minority representation and they did a packing. So now if they did packing the way they really wanted to, it would be maybe now one minority representative and everybody else to be just no minority representation, because now we have 11 positions that with no minority representation. And in the East, we only had one. We only had one black male in the first place. And so they gerrymandered him out of his seat. And so you can choose to run in a seat where you don't live. That's one of those things that's tough. I can tell you that, because what they're really truly doing is making it where it's hard to win in those districts. So that's what that gerrymandering does. And so we're really not supposed to change these lines until it's time for us to have the census, right? That's every 10 years. And I can tell you, since we've changed the census, we've changed these maps, I think 4 times already. And
Really?
yes, it is not a good thing. Let me say that. It is just not a good thing. And we have lawsuits that people have been filing. And the unfortunate thing about some of those are many of the judges side with the majority side because they're from the same party. And so that leaves us with the last ruling that came down, because I was one of the people who took the stand to share what was taking place, because it was in my district. The way they, divided, and mainly through the Black community is how they did that division. The ruling came out and said, well, as the General Assembly, that we can basically do what we want to do.
Wow.
All we have to do is vote on it, and we can do it.
Oh, wow. Well, there's a lot for us to talk about. We're going to take a brief break, and then we'll get back to how we can help you. I also want to talk about the effect of gerrymandering on not just the federal elections, but what's happening with the state. If we have a supermajority of Republicans, how'd that happen? How can we work against that happening again? So we'll take a brief break,
Okay.
and we'll be right back. You have been listening to Voices of We the People, a podcast for listeners of Eastern North Carolina. Um, what you may be asking is next for this podcast. Well, our next 2 podcasts focus on voting. Next week, we're going to have Marcus Thompson of Democracy in North Carolina, who will talk about how we build a voting community where everybody is encouraged to vote and understands how to vote, knows what's involved. And then we'll have Harmon Drudge, who is a data director for North Carolina Democratic Party, and he's going to help us understand what the numbers say about how we turn out and why we need to turn out. Because we got to help Senator Smith figure out how she's not the lone voice in the legislature and get some money for education, for health care, and the nonprofits who serve us daily. We got a lot of work to do. So hang in there. Um, I also want to talk about a forum, a voter education forum we're having February 1st from 9:30 to 1 in Jacksonville. And it's going to be a different kind of voter registration um, education forum, because we'll learn how to um, know if we're registered to vote, for example. And if we're not, remember the elections, the early voting is starting very soon. And if we are not registered to vote, we can register and vote at our early polling sites. So we're going to be delving into that. We're also going to help our participants figure out who they contact when they have a problem, who's running for office, and what that means for them when they're running for office. So, and what you as a listener need to know about who's going to represent you. You might not want that person to represent you. You might want somebody else to represent you. So we're going to be talking about those things. Um, if you want to register, call 252 424 0702 to register. That's a phone number, and just leave a message, or you can send an email to info@voiceofwethepeople.com. We'll see you on the 21st at 9:30. It's going to be at First Missionary Baptist Church on Broadhurst Street in Jacksonville. And get the word out to everybody that you know so that we can really have an informed discussion just about voting. Some other folks are talking about candidates, and that's really important. But we need to understand what voting requires of us and how we do it and how we share it with our community, our friends, our family, and to let them know that it's really, 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 really important. So keep listening for the two voting voting workshops on this air that are coming up in the next 2 weeks. Now, when last we spoke with Senator Candace Smith, who represents District 5, she was telling us that the legislature's kind of stalemated because we don't have a budget in North Carolina. And we're the only ones who don't have a budget. And the implication of that is tremendous. That just means if you're looking for education, if you're looking for teacher pay increase, if you're looking for some help with the healthcare issues that you have, not there. So we will bring Senator Smith back into the conversation, and she can tell us the 3 takeaways of our discussion of what she needs us to do. Because we're going to see if we can help her get some more folks into the legislature, given that we don't have a budget. Okay, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you so much. So a couple of things that I think about. It may be moving slow, but it's still moving, right? So it's important for your voices to be heard. So a couple of things I ask you to do is reach out to your legislators. A lot of people don't do that. You can do it by email. You can do it by calling them. But when you reach out to them, I say have one clear issue at a time and explain how it affects your family and your community. We talked about health. We talked about education. We're talking about the economy. So that's a very big thing. So I think that it's important for people to reach out to us as elected officials, engage locally also, because it's not just what happens at the state, it's also what happens at the county and at the city. So county commission.
So you're talking about know who your
Yes.
folks are at the local level and what they represent, and if they
Yes.
represent you.
Yes. So you have to look at those county commissioners, those school boards, those city councils. They play a huge role in how the state policies are implemented. And of course, vote. I tell people it is key that you vote. When you ask the question, how did we get where we are? People didn't vote. I hear people say, well, I didn't vote because it doesn't affect me, and they're gonna do what they want to do anyway. And how does my vote count? My vote doesn't count. And I often go back to when I ran for city council the first time. If 12 people would have said that, I wouldn't have been elected. And that was 12.
Yeah.
And so every vote counts. I've known some people to win by only one vote. So it is key for people to know that even if you do not vote, that's still a vote. And
that bears repeating.
yes, if you do not vote, that means you're still voting. And
Yeah.
so it's hard for people to complain when they don't allow their vote to be their voice. It's hard for other people who are fighting to listen to someone who's not willing to even fight for themselves. I often say we must be the change that we want to see.
Okay.
And we spend a lot of time looking for a savior. We're the change that we want to see, each of us, not because someone's elected, but you, and you, all of you are the change that you want to see. That means we have to do something different. We have to demand that we have people be accountable, because we don't want things to happen to you. We want things to happen for you. And there's a difference. And so I continue to say it's important for people to make sure they vote. Participation at every single level matters, not just during presidential elections, because I think people wait every 4 years. I got to go vote. Primaries matter. And how do we know? Right now, we're hearing that the president is calling for elections to be changed. He's very nervous because he said during these midterms, if we don't get what we need, if he doesn't get what he needs during the midterms, then he loses power in Congress. So he can't make all those decisions that he's making because he no longer has the votes. And so when people are just voting in presidential elections only, then they miss out on, that's the executive board. That's the executive branch. We also have the legislative branch. That's where we have the House and the Senate. And if we are not letting the House and the Senate, making sure that we have the people that we need, we're not voting during the midterms. Some people think that voting for them is every 4 years. No.
That's right.
The senators, every 6 years. But the congressmen and women, every 2 years, just like us. They're in the same cycle that we're on. That's why it matters to vote in these midterm elections, because they make a difference. And democracy works best when people stay engaged and when it's not just when it's election season. Let me say that. You got to stay engaged.
Let me ask you this. Often, as you just mentioned, when people don't vote, they see no connection between their non-voting and what happens around them, whether they get health care benefits or whether they get, as seniors, Medicaid, or as others, as veterans, get Medicaid that would help them in their daily lives. So could you give an example or two of how a vote from the community or from individuals helped to change what was happening, either at the state house or in local elections? Because I think people need to understand the vote is not something out there. It is something in here. It's our values. It's what helps us to make a difference in our communities. I just feel that sometimes we're not making that connection strongly enough for them. So could you help us?
Yes. Well, the one that really comes to mind and I can think about is when we had Medicaid expansion. We had been fighting for so many years to try to get Medicaid expansion. And during that fight, it was like, no, we're not going to do it. We're not going to do it. And finally, we got to the point where the vote for Medicaid expansion was tied to a casino. And
Casino?
yes, it was tied to a casino. And we was like, what? And basically, they had us to vote on Medicaid expansion. And after we voted on Medicaid expansion, then they put something in place that said that we could not expand Medicaid until we passed the budget, which included the casino stuff, because they were tied together. So it was a condition. And when that happened, we became very frustrated, and we signed a letter. The Democrats, we signed onto a letter and said, you know what? We don't think it's wise to gamble with people's lives. We have not had Medicaid expansion in all these years. If we have to wait another year, we're going to do it. But we're not going to be forced to vote for a casino in order to get Medicaid expansion. We're not doing that. And so once we sent that letter, eventually they backed down and took it away from being connected, took that off the table, and then we were able to have the vote like as we should, just with straight Medicaid expansion. It was able to be passed within the budget. Now, that took people letting their voices be heard. We received emails, we received phone calls. People were coming up to the General Assembly. They were sitting in sessions. They were listening to what we were doing. They were paying attention. They were sharing their stories, coming to some of the committee meetings, at how not having Medicaid expanded affected their families, affected their communities, affected their churches. So they were allowing their voices to be heard. So those are the type things that we need people to continue to do, because if not, then, I've heard some of my peers say, well, nobody came and said anything. They didn't seem like they were concerned. And I often say things like accountability matters.
Yes.
And if state agencies aren't responding to different things, that's accountability, right? They should be able to call us and say, hey, I reached out for a certain thing and they're not following through. Then my job is to help make sure that they remain accountable. Well, your job is to help sure that we're accountable as your elected official. I often say, if you can't reach us ever, you can't have a conversation with us. There's no avenue to have a dialogue or either by email with you, then why would you vote for us?
Yes.
Because you vote for people that you should have interaction with, right? You vote for people who are open to hear your concerns. Does not mean that you're going to agree with every single thing, because I don't think that's going to happen. But you want someone, if they don't agree, they can share with you why. So that's why it's key for people to make sure their voices are heard. Now, I think people respond more when it affects them. Like you said, if it doesn't affect them, well, now you see rates for people going to the doctor, all those things are doubling and tripling, and people are like, whoa, what's going on? So it's affecting them now. We're looking at the economy. The price of eggs is not like it used to be. Things are changing. People can't afford what they normally would afford. We're not giving raises to our state employees, but then now they have to pay more for their insurance, which means now they're making less if you really take a look at it. So when all these things start affecting the cost of living for people, that's how it affects you. I tell people it is affecting you. You may not see it now, but you're going to see it. And so it is important. It is key that we're working as a collective. Our voices are more powerful when we're together. And so when we are a part of civic groups, when we're a part of churches, students, parents, neighbors, it's important that we come together. And we should come together and listen and work and fight.
You know, one of the things that impressed me about what you just said is how roundabout budget making is. Because who in the world would have thought about a casino being tied to Medicaid expansion? That that just that just boggles my mind because I never would have thought. And I know a little bit about budget making, but a casino and healthcare, mm-mm. That was not something on my list of things to understand. So kind of help me understand this one.
Well, that's when you start putting politics over people. That's what
Mm-hmm.
happens. So they wanted the casino so bad. I don't know if it was a friend, because it was a lot that happened, right? So at a county commission meeting in the area where they wanted the casino to happen, they rezoned the area and didn't tell the people. And the people were very upset. That was one part about it. And then they decided when they were going to have someone to build this casino, um, usually you put out a bid so people could bid on building a casino. They made it where it was
Mm-hmm.
only one person that was going to build that
Oh,
casino.
really?
I mean, these are things that people just don't know. Um, and then they tied Medicaid expansion to it, because they said, we know y'all want Medicaid expansion so bad that you ain't gonna, they thought we wouldn't vote to not have it. And that was the whole corruption thing. And as a matter of fact, right now, the reason why we don't have a budget, I don't think we're going to have a budget until after the primary. And that's because we have, I will say this, every race that has a Republican in it has a contested race.
Oh,
So,
really?
yes, ma'am.
Really?
Yes, ma'am. So people may not know that, but people are tired. They're frustrated, and they don't think that their lives should be played with. People are dying because of what they cannot do, the money they don't have to take care of individuals. And so I think people have had it. And there is, every Republican race is contested. And one that is really contested is the Speaker of the Senate. And he's been in leadership for a very long time and doesn't typically have anyone running against him. And he has a primary from his own party. and it is a battle.
He's being primaried by his party.
It's another person in his party is primarying him. His sheriff is primarying him.
Could you explain what that means? Because some people may not be understanding of what being primaried means and the significance of being primaried.
So what being primaried means is if you are in, for me, for instance, I'm a Democrat and I am running again. If I have a primary, it means another Democrat decided to run for my seat. Mm-hmm. So now there's two of us running for the same seat as a Democrat. So that means the elections that are in March, I would be primaried if another Democrat ran against me. And then after the primary, whoever wins, then they go to the general election, which is in November. And that's typically where you have the Democrat versus the Republican or the unaffiliated. So those two major parties meet during November for that election. But a primary is from the same party. If it's a Republican running against a Republican or a Democrat running against a Democrat, that's a primary. And so there's a primary with the Speaker Pro Tem of the Senate. The sheriff of his county is running against him. And so
that's unusual, isn't it?
It is very unusual. That race has been up and down. The president has offered his endorsement during this race. And they also tried to get the sheriff to not run. One of the senators went to his home during Thanksgiving, knocked on his door, and tried to give him a letter, and he wasn't there. And he caught it on the Ring camera. He said, "This is not good. This should not happen." And so he said, "Listen, thank you, but no thank you. We feel like he's lost touch with the community. And so we want another person to represent." And so he's still running. So there's times when he's up and then times when he's down, but it's a very close race. And we've not had that, I think, in the last 25 years.
Wow. We're gonna have to bring our conversation to a close. Much to much to my non-delight, because I really enjoyed this conversation. But I want to give you an opportunity to express any last thoughts that you might have before we leave, and things that you want to bring to our attention, or just your thoughts.
Okay. Well, I think what I would say is going back to collective voices, they're powerful. Yeah. Staying silent doesn't protect our communities. And sometimes people want to do that, but staying silent does not protect our communities. Staying informed and connected does. So in Eastern North Carolina, what I would like to say is we've been resilient for a very long time. We've been resourceful. We've been deeply rooted in community. And so my job is to make sure that resilience is matched with real resources. That's what my job is. Make sure it's matched with real resources, with fair policy, and a government that listens. And so even in a difficult legislative environment like we're in, even without a finalized budget that we don't seem to have, even with challenging district maps that we're dealing with right now, we're going to keep showing up. We're going to keep pushing back whenever necessary, and we're going to keep advocating for the people that we represent. And so, because at the end of the day, what I would like to say is the work is about dignity, making sure that every family, regardless of their zip code, has access to opportunity. That's what the work is about. And so that's what I plan to do. And when I do that, that means I pledge to continue to put people over politics. It is about taking care of the people. And so please make sure that your voices are heard. Please make sure that you're staying informed. And if you don't know exactly what to do, join with a group or an organization and learn more about what they're doing, because there's a lot of groups out here, a lot of organizations out here that are doing the work. Join with them, because a lot of them do education. And the more you know, the better you grow. And then you can affect other people.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. It has been my pleasure and my honor to have Senator Kandie Smith with us as our guest. She's given us so much food for thought. You know, that's a religious idea. Food for thought. And things we can do as we go forward into this election season. It's going to require so much of us. We have to be educated. We have to understand. She gave us a civics lesson too, in case you weren't listening. There are three levels of government, and we need to know about all of them. So she gave us a great lesson in civics and a great lesson in community building. So I want to thank her very, very much for her time, for sharing her expertise and knowledge. And I have one other thing to say. I've learned so much from her this evening. If you would like to talk with Senator Smith, just call her. Her number is 910-715-8363. And I have to say this. From my very own experience, she's very approachable and helpful and patient. This will go a long way when you contact her and ask her the questions that we were talking about. And I know you have your very own conversation to have with her as well. She's very approachable and very gracious. So just call her. And to our audience, don't forget to go to our website, voiceofwethepeople.com, and give us feedback on today's program. You can also suggest future topics and guests. That would be great. And don't forget to support us. We need your finances. Become a sponsor or a donor. See our website, Voice of We the People, for more detail and further information. Before we go, let me give a shout out to our podcast team. Tamika Robinson is our manager and director, and boy, is she good. Blue Lady Radio, 810 Studios, our podcast manager. And my husband, James, he is all things technical, and we need that too. So, I am Dr. Gloria Frederick, your host, and thank you for listening. And see you next time for Voice of We the People. In the meanwhile, stay safe, be well, and keep yourself warm because it's going to get cold again. And stay off the road if you can. Again, thank you so much for listening. It has been my pleasure to have Senator Kandie Smith with us. And don't forget to call her. I gave you the number. And again, thank you for listening.